Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Chapter 1424 Found Treasure. I will finish here soon. I have found the stones, but I don't have a way to move them without breaking the instance. If I do that, then all hell is going to break loose, Carl warned. Alright, I will buy time. You've got about 10. Kara agreed. Carl stared at the stones, then realized he didn't need to destroy the garden to remove them. All he had to do was use earth manipulation to replace them and lift the real ones out of the soil. Then there would be a perfectly intact garden with the stones underneath, but without the link to the planet that would allow them to function. If he did it right, they would even have the runes, so whoever came digging here would believe that they had gotten it right. 432. Kara narrated. Damn it. She had meant seconds, not minutes. An explosion came through the entrance, nearly knocking him off his feet as Carl rushed to swap the stones. It might not be perfect given his lack of time, but he had memorized the runes last time and now he understood how they actually worked. However, when he tried to put them in a space, he found that was simply impossible. Both the stones and his beast spaces were linked to the planet's power and neither could be separated. Instead, he put them in a bag and leapt out the exit, aiming into the sky on the faint hope that he would be above the next attack. The orcs had spread into combat teams, fighting the much stronger giants 10-on-1. Not successfully, Carl noted. But they were trying. With the average giant being at the monarch rank and the average orc being a commander, there was a 2-rank difference, and not even the best of their weapons could make it up. The orcs were going to lose this fight unless Carl or Kara stepped in. Only Carl could feel the fog of Misty's time displacement ability already forming, and he could see an Orcish scout running off into the distance, presumably to get reinforcements for the battle. This wasn't the whole clan, just a hunting team that had actually found the great goal of their entire species. Found it only to have Carl steal it from under their noses before they could verify the find. Moments later, Carl was standing in a dimly lit room, its floor covered in silk pillows of the impossible shade that he immediately recognized as belonging to the Chaos Plane. Is this Saihosesa? He asked Misty, who was standing at his side while Kara rolled on the pillows. Right on the first guess. Yes, this is the Grand Palace of the Supreme Lady. I should have known that you could see the pillows. Misty agreed. Carl nodded. I have an affinity for the fundamental rules of Chaos Order, Divinity Fire, and mana manipulation. But mana manipulation is by far the most advanced. In fact, it should be getting close to actual understanding now. If I had a bit more time to study these stones, it would be perfect. Misty smiled. Well, you can do that now. Nobody will be looking for them here and now. Take a little break before you're off to the next mission. It's an important one and you need to look your best. Oh? The time dragon wiggled happily, nearly dancing in excitement. You're going to go meet yourself next. You're at just the right power level for it. The real question is, what am I going to do with these stones when I finish examining them? I can't carry them with me everywhere. He asked. That's fine. They belong here. But you'll have enough lingering essence of them on you to get the ball rolling once you're back in the Golden Dragon Nation. That's such a great time, I can't wait to actually do it in person. So she knew what was going to happen even when it involved herself. But she hadn't actually done it yet. That had to be horribly confusing. At that moment, the door at the far end of the room opened and Supreme Lady Matilda walked in. Or perhaps he should call her Legendary Lady Matilda, as this was after she had advanced. Young Carl. So strange to see you mortal again. Welcome to my home. Is this the first time from your point of view? She asked. Carl laughed. Indeed it is. Every other time you have come to me from the timeline that I know so far. Feel free to give spoilers if you want. The Chaos Dragon laughed. As if this isn't the hugest spoiler of them all? You're the only one in the world who knows where the system stones are. Well, at least on the days that the 2 timeless dragons are not around. The orcs are going to be big mad about this. They've been looking for ages and the stones weren't even there to be found because I moved them through time. Carl joked. Better than letting the giants break them, even if they're a replica set. They're pretty well done though. Are these ones Karaman's? Carl nodded and the Chaos Dragon hummed happily as she examined them. Not bad. I see what he was lacking. But I suppose it's too late to tell him now. Carl frowned and the Chaos Dragon winked at him. Oh, that bastard isn't dead. He just faked it and left for the immortal realm, so I couldn't send him on errands anymore. Everyone thought that he was stuck at the peak of Mythic, but he ascended nearly a century before he left. Carl shook his head in dismay. What did you do to the poor man that he would abandon an entire empire and leave the planet just to get away from your errand list? That's the thing, I didn't even ask him for big things. I've sent you on much more important missions than I asked him to do. But his temper was always terrible. All he wanted to talk about was unifying that nation of his or cry about his inability to find large-breasted goth girls. They weren't even in fashion for the last 2 centuries of his existence. Chapter 1425 Where to Put the Stones. Carl laughed at the look on the Chaos Dragon's face, then set the bag full of system stones down on the floor. Would you like me to arrange these somewhere? He asked. No, I have a better idea. I'm going to make a puzzle, and whoever wants to use the stones will have to arrange them on their own. It will be glorious. Matilda insisted. That was evil. There were 99 stones to the full array, and all but the inner ring were identically shaped with runes on all 6 sides. So there were 2 orientations for each stone that were viable and 90 positions for all but the inner 9 stones to go in. Trying to get them all properly placed while relying on luck would take centuries. Even just setting them up would take hours for Carl, and he already knew what the array was supposed to look like and how it worked. But Misty had said that he could take the time to study before he went out. All right, you make the puzzle, and I will study the stones until I understand this thing. I'm not quite comprehending about mana manipulation. I'm close to it, I can feel it. I just need a bit more time. Take all that you need. Nobody messes with my stuff, especially when I'm home. It's more important that you gain comprehension than that I get to start my plan to mess with future generations. That's one of the joys of immortality. You get to watch a well-laid plan come to fruition no matter how many times it takes them to get it right. Matilda agreed. Carl sat on one of the impossibly purple pillows and focused on the bag of system stones, mentally rearranging them into new positions and estimating what would happen if they were placed incorrectly. The flow of the mana, the contradiction between the runes and the intent. The more that he studied it, the more that he understood about how mana was intended to work and how it could be altered without breaking the fundamental rules. Then, as he experimented, he began to understand that the other rules could be used to break one of the fundamental rules, overlaying their power to warp reality in ways that it was not intended to be. That was what had happened with Kara's scar. The divine power of order, an unfathomable step more potent than the fundamental rule that it grew out of, had simply dominated all attempts to change its intent. While Carl couldn't do that, what he could do was a tiny fraction of the same thing. He could use the fundamental rules to set a permanent condition in effect as long as another rule was not used by someone of a similar comprehension level to negate it. That was how the system stones were enchanted. King Karaman, who had what appeared to be a complete understanding of one of the rules, had overlaid it on the enchantment to create a nearly indestructible set of stones, whose intended purpose could not be perverted by those weaker than his rule. The stones had been made when he was an immortal, so there were very few in this world who could even hope to challenge the stones' magic. That was why the giants were dead set on simply destroying the stones themselves. While Carl meditated on the great truths of the system stones, Misty and Kara set up the Go board again and started a new game with Matilda as their impartial observer, tasked with keeping them from cheating. Not that it would stop them from trying, but getting creative enough with a cheating attempt that the Chaos Dragon allowed it was a challenge of its own. A feeling of enlightenment came to Carl as he continued to study the system stones, and for a moment he thought that he might have made the final breakthrough. Then a system notification arrived. Skill learned. System stones legendary skill. Avatar of the World Dragon exclusive. Carl stared silently at the message in front of him. That was not at all what he was trying to do here. However, wasn't that skill just a little bit too broken? Or was it actually supposed to be somewhat useless, as the system stones weren't actually useful unless you were having issues with your system interface? When everything was created, they were just a tool to help new users understand how things worked and weren't intended to be necessary at all. Only after so many skills and powers were forgotten after the war between the dragons and the giants did they even start becoming relevant again. It was that destruction of power and knowledge that started the Dark Ages between resurgences, and before that time the skill would be even less valuable than the skill book, which would actually teach a skill and not just let someone interact with the interface more easily. But now it was a life-altering bit of knowledge. A tool that would help return power to the world in ways that nobody would have considered possible even 10 years earlier. If Carl was correct, then the baby dragons who were going to hatch in the tiny world would be able to use these stones he could make to awaken classes of their choice and not at random. They would love that. The god of death was going to strangle him when the avatars found out. No Dicarian was left behind in another resurgence. He wasn't around in Carl's own time, so it should be fine. Carl breathed a sigh of relief, then remembered that Naksha was waiting with the others and her uncle was in fact an avatar of the Black Dragon. But more than that, Carl had an inheritance from the Black Dragon to pass down to her. It had transferred to him when Nakt advanced with no family around, but it had been sitting mostly dormant in Carl's body until now. He really should do something about that now that he had the understanding of mana manipulation to actually transfer the inheritance from himself to someone else. He had gained an improved physique from it, so it wasn't totally lost. But the vast majority of it would not activate for anyone but a Black Dragon. The magic was still in his body waiting, and Carl could feel it. That was something he decided not to let his thoughts linger on today. Feeling the mana flows in your own body was a bit creepy, like focusing too much on your own breathing until it stopped feeling automatic. Chapter 4. The intricacies of mana were something that he could easily get lost in, but his attention was brought back to the real world, assuming that was where they were at the moment that Misty cheered in joy, celebrating her victory. She had finally won the game in a decisive enough way that even Kara couldn't claim it was a draw or a Pyrrhic victory. Look, he's back with us. Did you learn the thing? The Chaos Badger asked. Comprehension. Fundamental rule of mana manipulation 95%. Carl smiled. I believe that I did. I'm so close to complete comprehension that it's bound to come to me soon. I just need something that I'm not finding in these stones, and I will be there. Perhaps just a bit more time to study. Misty nodded. That is good enough. You can't reach immortality now, or I will have to go back in time and pull you out of your meditation so that you can do the thing. Are you ready? Carl nodded. Indeed. Let's get this show on the road. He vaguely remembered how things had gone when he had first arrived in the capital that time, but Carl took a moment to try to mentally refresh himself. Don't worry, if you get it wrong, it should be pretty close and nobody will notice. Misty informed him. Sure, nobody else might notice, but he would. Misty opened the portal and Kara cheered. Places everyone. Action. Misty stepped through the portal first, and Carl heard himself greet her. Right, he was still in the wrong form. Quickly Carl changed back to human, then fully buffed himself, including Behemoth, to make himself 5 meters tall, roughly the size that he remembered himself being. Then he activated bestial raiment, and flipped his visor down so he wouldn't immediately be recognized. Kara used War Beast to increase her size so she could sit properly on the enlarged Carl's shoulder, and the pair stepped out into the battlefield. There was only one issue with their disguise. There was no way that the giants were not going to recognize his aura, and Carl didn't know how to change it, only how to dampen it so that it wasn't so intense. But that was not the goal today. Today he wanted to intimidate and impress. Once he was through the portal, Carl found himself staring at a peak mythic rank Titan, a youthful 4-armed giant born in the immortal realm. There they were, the lowest of their kind, born mortal in an immortal world. But here it lived up to the name Titan. The skies churned overhead as the two stared at each other, the Titan's hatred palpable even from the center of the city, where most of the others would be waiting if Carl's memory served him. It's too late, Carl declared, glaring at the enemy champion who had dared to come and try to squish his younger self. It's never too late. The giant cast mana suppression, drawing a massive amount of power into himself as every barrier, defensive spell, and lingering magical effect collapsed around the capital. Carl hadn't recognized the spell the first time. He had thought that it was a side effect of simply being this powerful. But now he could see it clearly, and he could do something about it. Let's take you back home. You know better than to meddle with things that must be. Misty insisted, startling Carl. The Titan wasn't just from another world, he was sent through time to mess things up? That explained a lot. But her time displacement was not an instant effect, and the Titan lashed out in fury, hurling black lightning heavily imbued with an unknown fundamental rule at Carl. Carl drew the Blade of Champions and swatted the spell away using Chaos Blast, and the fundamental rule of mana manipulation to deflect it. What had happened next in the original timeline? He couldn't recall, and now he was going to have to improvise. Or had things already changed? Mana suppression had drawn every bit of ambient mana out of the area, and Carl was about to nullify it, but then the mist enveloped all of them, and he found himself standing in a massive city, one designed for giants. The giant blinked slowly as he realized they had moved, despite his attempt to suppress all the mana in the area. I am going to crush your head, he snarled, entirely done with Carl and his nonsense. Carl, for his part, had no idea why this Titan was so mad at him, as they had only met for a few brief seconds so far. But the creature was definitely mad. Kara transformed so that she could properly trash-talk the obnoxious Titan. Go ahead and try. I will ask the dragon to heal you up and send you back so we can whoop your ass twice in one day, she taunted. In the distance, Carl heard uproarious laughter from other giants, and a group of mythic ranked men poured out of their homes to watch the fight. It was obvious that despite his size, Carl was not a member of the giant clans. But his opponent was. And Kara's jab had hit home hard. He was practically frothing at the mouth in rage, and the fight hadn't even started yet. The Titan summoned a two-handed axe with a skill and dropped into a combat stance, while Carl casually stood with the Sword of Champions slung over his shoulder. If you need a better weapon, I don't mind waiting while you go home and ask your mom to loan you some money, Carl suggested with his kindest smile. That was it. The Titan couldn't take any more of this insufferable man's mockery. The giants rushed to make a large circle around them, marking the boundary of the fight, while Kara and Misty were pushed back behind the wall of bodies. The giants just assumed that they were small children unworthy of a front-row seat to the battle. Nobody stopped long enough to notice that neither of them belonged here at all. Chapter 14:27, Make Your Move. The Titan made the first move, an overhand chop that shattered the stone where Carl had been standing until a split second earlier. The skill continued until the ring of spectators, where it was stopped by a barrier ability protecting the majority of the city from the fallout of two peak mythic combatants. Carl charged forward, forcing the Titan to parry with all four hands on the axe. The giant slid backward with the brute force of Carl's hit, but his defensive spells were unharmed. Carl hadn't used anything more than brute force to test the strength of his opponent and found that despite the size advantage, his buffs gave him a distinct edge in physical prowess. That was bad news for the giant, as Carl added Chaos Blast, an innately immortal ranked skill, to his next series of attacks. The fundamental rule of chaos destabilized the area around the Sword of Champions, causing barriers to fail on contact and the giant to retreat at a run after his weapon was dispelled. The others were openly mocking him now, running from an enemy who didn't even reach his shoulders. They might not be any more convinced that they could win this fight than the Titan was, but they weren't going to let him simply run away from a fight. One of the larger Titans in the crowd tossed a large sword into the ring, and Carl flicked it up with his toe, tossing it into the hands of his opponent. "We can't have you claiming it was an unfair fight. I hope you learned to use a sword better than you use an axe. Die. I will rip your head off and spit in the throat hole." The Titan roared. "Oh, he's that kinky. Kara giggled, making the other giants laugh even harder. Carl was beginning to understand why this man hated him. If he hadn't come from before this event, but after, there was going to be some lingering resentment. The Titan roared and pounded his blade into Carl's defenses, causing the air to shake as Chaos Blast absorbed the impact. It was probably not the right spell to be using on a sword in combat, but Carl thought that it was actually rather appropriate given the circumstances. It was flamboyant, dramatic, and heavily imbued with a fundamental rule that wasn't mana manipulation. That would give away his exact progression, so it was better to use chaos on his attacks and let the giants think that they still had plenty of time before Carl would be close to becoming an immortal rank threat. If they realized just how close he had gotten, they would surely inform someone above them and start to send more forces after him. Is that all that chaos can do? The giant huffed as he parried another set of Carl's attacks. "Oh, you haven't seen the true nature of chaos," Carl joked. "Magic punch," he shouted in Dwarven, and the giant shifted to a guarding position as Carl's fist raised. Then he kicked the giant in the groin. "Foul. Combat foul. Let him up." The giants in the ring booed while trying not to laugh. There were few giants in the known universe who didn't speak the language of their eternal nemesis. "That was a kick," the Titan wheezed. "That's what makes it magical. I learned it from a children's cartoon." Carl agreed. Carl let his opponent shake off the pain and then get back into a combat stance before continuing. But now the Titan was wary of a cheap shot at all times, and it was slowing his reactions. His attacks were getting sloppy as he got frustrated, and the taunting jeers from his countrymen only made the situation worse. Not even the other giants were on his side. A missed parry left a deep cut down his left flank, pouring blood on the stone of the arena, and then Carl hit him with an earthquake, nearly shaking him off his feet before a solid strike with the flat of the Blade of Champions sent him flying into the crowd. They put him back on his feet within the ring and began stomping their feet. "First blood is drawn. Second blood ends the challenge," a booming voice declared from the back of the crowd. The giants parted, and an aging mountain giant at the peak of mythic rank stepped forward. He stopped at the front row as Carl and the Titans circled each other, and Kara whispered dirty tactics into Carl's mind. Two rapid swings clashed, with neither side coming out ahead, but Carl had no intentions of playing nice. Elemental's Wrath and Dark Flame turned his whole appearance into that of a massive black fire elemental, and his strength doubled as the Blade of Champions crashed into the Titan's defenses, driving him to his knees and carving a deep furrow into his shoulder. Carl stepped back as the giant's arm went limp, and the elder in the crowd raised his voice. "Second blood. 2 rounds to 0. This challenge has been decided." Carl let the spell fade, but kept most of his buffs active to remain 5 meters tall and somewhat respectable by giant-size standards. The elder looked down at Misty, who had crept between the feet of the spectators to rejoin the front row, while Kara transformed back into a badger. "For the same reason, you temporal dragon, leave this place with your people. We have an agreement," he insisted. "Indeed. Or I thought that we did. I brought this one back from somewhere he should not have been. He earned that beating and more. But I will let it go here as long as you warn your seer not to cause me more trouble." The giant elder nodded and made a shooing gesture before pausing when he noticed Kara standing beside the dragon. "Don't forget to take everyone with you. We don't want it, and you can't make us keep it," he added. "I feel like that was an insult." "It was, wasn't it?" Kara huffed. "Or a compliment. They definitely can't handle a personality as strong as yours." Carl joked. You're not wrong. But I'm still leaning toward insult. Misty, take us away before I start throwing hands." Chapter 1428, Misty's Rooms. Misty complied after only a moment's hesitation and brought them back to Matilda's house. "All right, we've finished with the most important parts of the timeline rescue. Now we can do the easy part. It's not really a change in the timeline, not exactly. All that we need to do is sit here and wait for someone to show up, then play all mysterious and lead them to the puzzle that Matilda made for them," Misty announced as she removed a bag of pretzel sticks from her inventory. Kara brought out a bottle of wine and the two girls immediately began rearranging pillows. "Why do I get the feeling that you're more at home here than most places?" Carl asked, curious about the odd pale dragon. "Of course I am. I live here. In fact, I've lived here for longer than Matilda has lived here. I recommended the spot when she wanted to build a castle. So you could say that this is my ancestral home," Misty declared proudly. "Well, that makes sense. If anyone could pick the perfect spot for her castle, it would be you. Somehow I just didn't see the two of you as roommates," Carl replied with a shrug. Misty blinked slowly as she stared at him. "I mean, I guess you could call us roommates. We do live in the same castle. But she lives way over there and I live here. So we're more like neighbors?" "It's not even the same building." Kara considered her options, then added a plate of cheese and sliced meat to their snack assortment, which Misty countered with a fruit platter. "You know, I used to be a guild member, but then the Immortals complained. They said that it would introduce bias, whatever that means. So they made me stop being one. But they didn't say that I had to move or anything, so I'm just here whenever I don't have to do things," she explained. "I get the feeling that means you're not actually here much," Carl noted. "That depends how you look at it, but yes. I am gone for the majority of my lived hours. Still, I spend quite a bit of time here. It's all relative." Carl nodded. "When you were gone for weeks or months taking care of an issue, then you return to the same day, you could say that you spend very little of your time home but still be home every day. Do you think that we're going to get a good show when they come for the puzzle?" "I got the feeling that they were just going to get frustrated," he asked. "Oh, trust me, it's going to be great. Sit and have a snack first, we've got time to relax." Carl added a collection of crackers to the snack platter for a bit of crunch and then settled next to the girls while they waited for whatever was supposed to be happening soon. Given that Misty had chosen their time, Carl assumed that the arrival should coincide with them nearly finishing their snacks, so he wasn't too worried about being interrupted. Sure enough, the wine bottle was nearly empty when he sensed someone sneaking into the castle, hiding their aura and likely their visible appearance. But he could feel their mana pool and he could see their soul moving in the courtyard outside. "Well, here we go. How are we going to do this? Or do we just improvise once they reach the puzzle room?" "Well, we can't make it too easy on them, and they're immortal. So feel free to mess with them a little. I've reinforced the castle itself, so don't fear letting some golems go pick on them, maybe a little illusion to check their intelligence. Also, don't let them wander into the private wing, guide them to the puzzle. But don't let them see us in person," Misty instructed. That should be easy enough, Carl thought. There was only one person and he looked more like a researcher than a hardcore combat junkie. So if Carl threw a bunch of interesting magic in his way, he would likely follow it directly to where they wanted him to be. No need to do anything drastic, just a bit of entertainment, and then they could watch the puzzle attempt. The first obstacle that Carl decided to throw at the interloper were gargoyles in the garden. There were already statues in the area that looked like gargoyles of various types, but he added a collection of randomly shaped ones just to make the intruder paranoid. "Oh, I like that one. It might lead to him smashing my garden, but it's a great prank." Misty laughed as she watched the chaos out the window. Their guest had been studying one of the statues when Carl cast the gargoyle spell, which created a weeping angel-shaped gargoyle behind him. He had turned just in time for it to stop halfway to him with its hands extended, too late to play statue again. "What the hell? Shit, gargoyles. Not all of them, just some. This place is definitely the right one." He cursed to himself as he cautiously retreated while watching the angel statue. Really, the gargoyle was just distracting him while the others got closer, but the intruder didn't realize they were an imminent threat until his danger sense told him that one was within striking distance of him. He's really not prepared for combat, Kara noted as the man drew his sword to fight off the protectors of the garden. "I think he's a researcher or some sort of bullied student that got sent here on a bet." Carl agreed. Misty smiled and shrugged. She knew the answer, but spoilers ruined it for everyone. He was weak for an immortal. But the power advantage and the immortal blessing that caused him to take a tenth the damage that a mythic warrior would were enough to defeat the gargoyles and lead him into the castle itself. That was where he ran into the first real trap. The illusionary domain. Chapter 1429, Maze for the Immortal. The immortal looked around nervously at the ancient castle in front of him. Something was vaguely off about this place, but there was so much magic in the walls that it was impossible to tell what exactly it was. The stone itself was ancient, imbued with a magic far beyond his own level, but there were other enchantments here, weaker ones. What he couldn't tell was if they were intended to be a non-lethal method of capture, an afterthought, or if the spells had started to fade with age and simply couldn't maintain their integrity anymore. If that was the case, he had come just in time. The professors had informed him that this backwater mortal world held a legendary treasure, a gift left behind by an ancient being before it ascended to minor divinity. They didn't know what it was, but the professors had never steered him wrong before, and the magic of this place certainly did feel like it could have been done by a legend. Slowly he turned in a circle. He had been here before, he was absolutely certain of it. Damn it, he had walked into an illusionary domain the moment that he entered the building, and he had just been walking in circles in the first room. Detection showed him the way out, and far above him Carl sighed. He's definitely a researcher. He's got a spell to just lead him out of the illusion without breaking it. I was sure that we were going to get some entertainment as he rummaged through the illusion for the key. Misty smiled down at the scene replayed in a bowl of still water. I like that you left an actual key so he could treat it like a puzzle and work his way out without using brute force. Very classy. Totally in theme with the event. Carl chuckled. The next part was not a nonviolent answer. He had placed a pair of epic golems in the hallway, earth elementals at the mythic rank who would activate with proximity and slow the man's approach while keeping him interested in the right route. How long do you think that we can divert him for without making it too obvious that we're keeping him out of most of the building? Carl asked. Probably not more than half an hour, but don't worry, I will kick him out after he's done. I'm not letting some random loot my house like it's an ancient relic. The mere thought was offensive, and she had even removed all the valuable decorations from the path that led to the puzzle. Fortunately, the student was quick to catch on, and when he saw the second earth elemental, he cast an upgraded cloaking spell on himself, allowing him to sneak past it instead of fighting it. He was actively trying not to smash everything that he came across, a proper history student and not just a treasure hunter. Oh, I know what we need. Kara giggled, then activated Chaotic Zone to turn all the side doors down the hallway into minor trial grounds with a single set of epic golems and an undead army inside. Each had a different theme, but all were outdoors based so that he would know he stepped into a spell. The chances that he would actually go in and kill the golems were low given his past behavior, but he stopped at every door to examine the interior and guess at the odds that it was the room which contained the treasure he had been sent here for. The teachers hadn't been able to tell him what the mysterious treasure was, only that it should have the aura of legendary magic if it was still fully intact. That wasn't a lot to go on, and this whole place was full of strange mortal magic, though the building itself was clearly made by someone who had transcended the ranks of the mere immortals. Is this a temptation trap? It has to be, he muttered to himself. Though who was actually going to be lured in by such a simple? Were those dark elven priestesses in their nightgowns? This place was truly diabolical. Just a short visit couldn't hurt. No. He had to remain focused. He could come back to that room later. Kara laughed herself to tears as the immortal found the elves, and she found his weakness. This guy was just too much fun to mess with. He hadn't even looked twice at the hot tub full of catgirls, but he was nearly defeated by a pair of busty elves. Carl set an illusionary domain to loop him back down this hallway just in case he was pulled in the second time, and they could get a good show out of the spider goddess priestesses preparing a willing sacrifice. With a deep breath, the immortal pulled himself away from the sight and moved to the next door, only to find that he was back in the same spot again, facing the alluring charm of the priestesses as they called for him to enter. They couldn't leave the chaotic zone, so he had to come in. But his will was at least a little bit stronger than that, and he managed to close the door to focus his will on moving forward. It took a few minutes before his hand left the door handle, but he did realize that he had been looped by the illusion which he was now studying. Is it triggered by duration? Perhaps by interest? What sort of being created this place? It almost feels like they have mastered the rule of chaos, but most of the magic in the building is not chaos-based. Is that the secret to transcendence? Learning two rules completely? He muttered. Misty smiled and shook her head at Carl's inquiring gaze. If it was, he would have it entirely too easy. Multiple rules would make it easier to move up the stages of immortality, though. The more that you understood, the easier it was to grasp the aspects that would increase your power as an immortal. Chapter 1430 Puzzle Room. Moving forward, the immortal passed a few empty rooms, assuring him that he was past what he had recorded as the hallway of temptations, which were actually guest suites when they weren't set up to troll intruders. She didn't put the puzzle far enough into the castle, were about to run out of places to safely lead him. Kara complained. That's fine. He's supposed to find it after all. I've decorated the room for him and everything so we can mess with him as he tries to solve the puzzle. Misty replied. She had set up speakers in the room to relay their voices, allowing them to pretend to be part of the spell or to speak for the system if that was how they wanted to play it. This place is incredible. I can feel at least two types of magic stronger than immortal ranked, and both have been active for eons. He muttered to himself as he examined a carving on the wall. He called me old. I'm certain that he just called me old. Misty complained. Should we put some more violent obstacles in his way? Kara asked hopefully. Misty nodded. Yes, do that. I'm tempted to just throw him out right now for that remark. But Matilda said that he's supposed to get the chance to try the puzzle. The thought of those two dragons relying on each other as positive reinforcement was enough to make even Kara wonder how the world had survived this long. But it had, so they must complement each other's strengths. Kara set the next obstacle in the way, and she wasn't holding back this time. Instead of something large and obvious, she used crypt scarabs, a flesh-eating beetle at the mythic rank. Then she gave them limited invulnerability. They weren't likely to die in one hit unless he panicked and went all out, and the beetles appeared by the swarm thanks to chaotic zone. The high-pitched squeal that the man made was not a sound that should have come from a creature his shape. Carl was certain of it. But the message that it conveyed was unmistakable. He was absolutely terrified of bugs. Dozens of fireballs exploded in the hallway as he shrieked, and then dozens more after the beetles were long gone, turned to ashes in immortal rank hellfire. Burn them, kill them with fire. No more bugs, no more bugs. He muttered to himself over and over while he wrapped his arms around his midsection. Oh, I think that we hit an old trauma there. That's more than just a little bit of doesn't like bugs. But that will teach him to call our lovely little Misty bad names. Kara declared. She knew the dragon was ancient. Carl knew the dragon was ancient. But she liked the appearance of a small girl, so that was how everyone treated her. Well, everyone outside the church, as they all treated her as a revered bishop, one of the highest authorities of the church in this world. The traumatized visitor slowly made his way down the hall, occasionally tossing fireballs into the shadows and continually increasing the output of his light spell until he could be walking through a surgical suite. Slowly he was calming down, and he hadn't even noticed that Carl had hidden the side hallways from sight, leading him straight to the puzzle. How does the puzzle work? Is there a time limit? Or do we just troll him until he gives up? Carl asked as their unwanted guest reached the final doorway. Matilda said that we would know once the puzzle started, so I don't really know yet. That's part of the fun, isn't it? Misty asked. So she was hiding the answer from herself, avoiding seeing that particular part of the future, so that it would be a surprise when it happened. The door opened and the immortal found himself standing in a room full of golden reward chests, each one slightly different, arrayed along the walls in a double row, while a circular altar stood in the middle with holes carved in it for the system stones. At least Matilda wasn't going to make the visitors guess what the pattern looked like. Choose your challenge appeared along one wall in Matilda's distinctive script. Then repeated in a half-dozen more languages, including runic, circling the room above the golden chests. Choose my challenge? What does that even mean? Am I supposed to solve a puzzle? To what end? He muttered to himself. I recommend not taking a battle of wits. Kara joked in her best creepy ghost voice. Who's there? Damn it, this place is messing with me. He complained, still looking for the source of Kara's voice. But the speakers were hidden behind the stones of the wall, distorting the voices even further until they were a haunting whisper. The researcher scanned the room, looking for the source of the voice until the message repeated itself. Choose your challenge. Random challenge in 30 seconds. That got him motivated. I choose magical theory. Can that be the challenge? He asked. Theoretical challenge accepted. Please select a starting location. The golden boxes lit up and Carl waited for the perfect moment. The researcher touched a box and Carl gave a deep laugh. Yes, start with that one. That is the way. He mumbled, and the researcher's hand froze. Kara laughed hysterically as the man began to panic, wondering if the voice was messing with him or if it was intending to help him. But Carl wasn't saying anything else, so he was left to his own devices. This is so much better than just watching them try to solve the puzzle. But remember, we can't help the challenger or directly hinder them. We're just here to make them doubt themselves and to have a little laugh. Misty reminded them. Of course. We won't go too far. He made it through the obstacle course alive, so he won't crack under pressure if we just give him random laughter. Carl agreed. The temporal dragon nodded and took a bite of cake, moaning happily as she chewed, a sound that Kara broadcast into the trial room. Wait, is there someone else here? Hello? Can you hear me? He asked. Then he paused, looking confused. I could have sworn that I heard someone having sex in the next room. Misty stuck out her tongue at the projected image. It was far better than that. She was having cake. Chapter 1431, Location Matters. Carl watched intently as the intruder examined his options. Carl's voice had seemed deliberately designed to make him doubt himself, but there was still a chance that it was telling the truth. So he went with the first option that he was going to pick. The golden chest revealed an inner circle piece, 1 of 9. That would make things relatively easy on him, as there was only one layer of stones with that shape, while the other stones made multiple concentric rings around it. Choose the correct location. This is your first magical theory challenge. Appeared on the wall. That was a trick question, Carl knew. It was the inner ring and the first piece placed. It didn't actually matter where he put it, all the other stones would be placed in reference to where it was. However, the immortal didn't know that, and he immediately began taking out various tools to assist his decision. A compass, protractor, a textbook in the runic language, a tape measure, ritual candles, incense, and an entire carafe of coffee. Oh, this one is a professional researcher. Kara laughed as she saw the massive container of coffee appear. Yep, and it looks like he might be able to read the runes on the stones. I wonder how much sense he's going to be able to make out of them when they're only coming out one stone at a time? Misty asked. The immortal was writing down every rune on the stones, but Carl knew that they weren't in order and only a fraction were visible from the outside. However, that shouldn't stop a trained researcher at his level. Once he began to examine the magical links, he would begin to understand how the stone was intended to work. But after an hour he was still staring at the massive runes and incomplete magical links. There has to be a better way to do this. There is definitely a right and wrong spot, and it only fits one of the 9 central spots. The outer rings have differently shaped stones. But there are no marks to tell me what way the array is intended to be oriented or what it does, he grumbled. Kara broadcast herself laughing, and the researcher turned to glare at the walls. I knew it, there is an obvious answer and I've just missed it. Again he examined the room, then studied his tools. Damn it. If this is not a directional array, I am going to scream. Kara laughed harder while Misty broadcast a message. Do you scream, pretty? I bet you have the best screaming voice. She whispered in a sultry tone. The researcher choked on his coffee. What sort of twisted trial is this? Is that a succubus voice? Or did she mean actually screaming? Is it those dark elven priestesses again? I almost lost my train of thought there. This place is insidious. I wonder if I can get another stone so I have something to refer to? Trial taker is requesting a second piece. Y/N. Yes, please. Kara nodded as a second golden chest floated over to his hands. Well, he asked for magical theory. Wait, we should be studying what he's doing. We can probably learn magical theory from him. Carl frowned. That was good in theory. But he had no idea what the guy was doing half of the time. His way of researching the stones didn't make any sense. They watched in silence for about an hour when Carl realized what the issue was. He doesn't understand mana manipulation. He's trying to decipher it using just the words and energy links within the stone. Misty nodded. He's so not going to win this challenge. But his theory knowledge is strong, he might get a consolation prize. I think that Matilda used chaotic zone on the room, so he should get a reward if he gets anything right. The second stone was from the third ring, and none of the connections led directly to the first stone. Not just that, but the clauses in the runic writing were completely unrelated. Damn it. They're obviously part of the same array, but this doesn't tell me anything. Now I have 2 stones and no idea where they go. Unless I take all of them out and study them, I don't know what to do. No, I think I have this. The links all lead to other stones and there is no reference to directionality. So if I place the first one and ask for another, I might be able to use a triangulation process to locate it properly. With shaking hands, he set the inner circle stone in place and the spot on the array lit up. Alright, that's a relief. Now that the first one is set, I just need to find the right spot for the next one. Let's see, it doesn't have any links to the initial stone, so we can rule out any of the spots that do. He mumbled as he worked. But there were still too many spots left and he couldn't completely eliminate the chances that he would pick the wrong one. Plus, he didn't know what would happen if he guessed wrong. I wonder if it will let me pick another stone? He asked hopefully. A random gold box lit up and floated to his hand. This stone did link directly to the first one, he discovered after a few minutes of examination. But he couldn't tell which side of it was supposed to be up. The rune that linked the two was in the center of the narrow side of this stone, so it could be either way. Orient them to each other. That's the best option. The end cap runes on both. Face the same way if I set it like this and there. The second spot lit up as he set the stone in it, but then disaster struck. He had forgotten that he was holding a stone in his other hand and unthinkingly used it for support to stand back up. The location where the third stone touched the ground lit up red and a new string of text appeared on the wall. Incorrect placement. Magical theory trial failed. Chapter 1432 Trial failed. Misty laughed at the absurdity of losing the trial because you used a piece as a support to help stand up, while Kara pointed at the immortal's reflection in their viewing bowl and mocked his idiocy. There was nothing they could do about it. The trial conditions had been set by Matilda, and they were just here to observe. 2% completion. Reward granted. The message on the wall declared. The immortal looked hopeful that he might still get something meaningful out of this trip. However, he had not accounted for the fact that this puzzle had been created by a legendary chaos dragon. There was no way that he was getting out of this without at least being made fun of a little bit. A moment after the notice arrived, the immortal was granted his reward in the form of a mythic rank mage staff and a small wooden box. Well, I got something from it. I might not know what the puzzle is making, but perhaps this is fucking with me. It is fucking with me. Kara laughed hysterically, letting her voice echo through the puzzle room as the immortal realized that he got a staff of levitation and a fancy box of tissues. Misty winked at them, and then fog filled the puzzle room and the immortal vanished. That was fun. I think that I'm going to like having the puzzle here until it is claimed. Now where were we? Right, we had just finished with you rescuing yourself, and now I should likely send you back home. Or we could go on a small adventure. Kara raised one clawed paw and the dragon nodded. That's 2 votes for an adventure. Majority rules. She was about to do something when Matilda walked into the room, legendary ranked and looking like she hadn't slept in a week. Don't go causing any more trouble. I need to deal with things in the immortal realm for a bit. Just send them back and you can go on an adventure another day. She instructed. Misty sighed. Fine. But only because the puzzle room you made was so much fun. How did he do? He tripped with a piece in his hand and failed at piece 3. Matilda smiled and shook her head. He's never going to live that one down. Her gaze seemed to burn into Carl's very soul as she examined him. You're getting close to immortality. We definitely need to send you back so that the others can be where they need to be before you ascend. Kara huffed and the dragon patted her furry head. You too, but you already know the schedule. The fact that the 2 Chaos-affiliated beasts could keep secrets from him was a never-ending headache for Carl, who was used to simply eavesdropping on his bonded partner's thoughts. You should probably prepare yourself to have your soul ripped apart. Oh, and eat something, this is going to require energy. Misty warned. Carl wasn't sure what she meant, but he did what she suggested anyhow and grabbed a snack while mentally preparing for pain. The shift through time was no worse than usual, perhaps even more smooth than he remembered it being. But the moment that he arrived, that peaceful state changed. With his extra understanding and the gains he had obtained, he had gotten out of balance with Dana, and the soul bond was forcibly equalizing them. It used the energy that he had stored, both mental and magical, to complete the process so that Dana was brought up to his level. But it was not a gentle or measured process. The bond wanted to instantly fix the imbalance that he had caused during weeks away from her. However, Dana wasn't the only one affected. Carl had built up a huge amount of energy in the beast spaces with everyone gone, and the change hit them like a truck, startling Leo so much that he retreated into his shell, instinctively hiding on the island in his space. Misty had brought them to the Drod Guild House, and the arrival of Carl with an overload of power was enough to shake half the city out of its exhausted stupor. They had returned to only minutes after they had left, and the city had been destroyed by an immortal realm invasion only days earlier by their perception. Having someone with immense power appear unexpectedly was enough to cause panic attacks before they realized that it was Carl and that he lived there. You might want to put your aura away, you're freaking out the locals. Tessa reminded him in a dry tone. Sorry, I've been letting it out for a while and I forgot. With his aura dampened, it wasn't nearly as unnerving for everyone else in the area, and the city of Drod began to relax a little. The only ones who didn't immediately try to go back to sleep or back to work were the members of the Darklight host, who rushed out to welcome the branch leader back. Matron Blackclaw, the orphanage leader in the workshop caverns of the Drod Guildhouse, came out smiling. Lord Carl, welcome back. We were expecting you to be gone longer than a few minutes. She laughed. Time is relative when you've got a temporal dragon on your side. Carl agreed, then realized that Misty had vanished again. He couldn't find her with soul sight, so she might have left for another time and place. Or she might be able to actually hide from him. There was a lot that he didn't understand about the powers of that dragon. Did you gain what you were hoping for? The red dragon asked. I did. I am incredibly close to full comprehension of a fundamental rule now. Once I get there, it's only a matter of time before I reach true immortality. Tessa and the others stared at him in envy while Carl patted Kara on the head, to distract her from checking everyone's pockets. The contents would be the same as when they left anyhow. New spells? Dana asked hopefully. Some incredibly good ones, yes. Where are the healing tree and the bear? Everyone should hear this at once. Chapter 1433 Unstuck. The answer was in the workshop cavern commissioning equipment from the artisans. Good, you're all here, so I will grant you all 2 spells if you can use them. The first is Greater Beast Form, which is a direct upgrade of the beast form that you already have. Champion Carl offers knowledge. Dana smiled as the spell took effect, and she shifted into a kitsune form that almost looked like her regular fox form, but with longer tufts on the ears and claws on her fingers that radiated holy energy. The real change was to Tessa. Greater Beast Form turned her into a juvenile red dragon instead of a fully scaled dragonkin the way that Beast Form did. Carl nodded in satisfaction, then stared at Lotus, trying to determine what changed. She was still just over 2 meters long, barely larger than Button, and appeared to be the same green dragon whelp that she always was. Ophelia, on the other hand, was an even larger than usual demonic warbear. Her class progression had given her multiple buffs to her transformation size, and even without buffs the berserker was a 4-meter ball of muscle and fur. Carl winked at Naksha, who was left out of this transformation round as the spell didn't work on a full-blooded dragon. Don't worry, the next one is good for everyone. Before anyone could get distracted, Carl activated. Follow me, little one. Again. Champion Carl offers knowledge. Warbeast didn't increase Donna's size, but her fur glowed with pure white energy, and Tion immediately jumped into her arms. Oh, this is good. She's so warm now. Pure healing energy. The stone fur divine fox cheered. Ophelia's warbeast form was a bipedal warbear in metal plate armor. Lotus got a crown of flowers on her dragon's head, while Naksha and Tessa both got battle plate for their dragon forms, which expanded as they were upgraded to an epic grade physique. Thor returned to his space to activate the spell, and his behemoth form doubled in size as it gained shining silver plate armor. His size was absolutely ridiculous if he didn't try to reduce it. He was now 20 meters tall and at least 3 times that long, depending on whether you counted his tail or not. Then his form began to shift as he evolved, and New layer of armored scales formed under the metallic armor. Oh, brother Thor has joined us at mythic rank. Good work, big brother. Leo congratulated him. Thank you. I thought that I would be stuck again, but that spell was just what I needed. The false island giant turtle tried the skill and his shell gained a layer of metallic plating that didn't feel like it weighed anything. He also got plates on his limbs, tail, and head. An extra armored turtle was a most excellent skill in his estimation. He might not really specialize in combat, at least not at his age, but he would be nearly impossible to damage in this form. Remy examined her new form, which was much like her old form but with better armor, then checked on Ray, whose transformation was more like Kara's. Just slightly larger than she had been, with upgraded chitin in place of the super durable hide that Kara got. Now we're all epic. Well, we were epic to begin with, but now it's official. Ray celebrated. You have no idea how much I missed your confidence while we were out exploring with Misty. Carl laughed at Ray's self-assessment. We need to do a lot of catching up. I know that you have good stories to tell. You touch stuff in my space. Ray agreed. Definitely. I did try not to take anything important, but some of it had to be good stuff for a dragon princess. You would have liked her. They picked on her when she was slow to grow, and when I asked, she declared that her mission in life was to get bloody vengeance on everyone who had ever wronged her. Ray sighed dreamily. She sounds lovely. Kara nodded eagerly. She really is. I wonder if she's still alive somewhere? She had the potential to make it to immortality, but I haven't heard of her being anywhere on this planet anymore. She would have been queen of Gathuzan a very long time ago. Ray scoured her memory of all the worthy targets she had researched. There was no immortal in Gathuzan that she could recall. So she was either killed or she left for the immortal realm. That was a shame. Dana poked Carl in the side, pulling his attention away from the beasts. Reunion. Now that you've given us all epic transformation spells, I suppose it's time that we help the others advance, isn't it? Did you find anything that would help them reach mythic rank? Remus been working on a potion, but she didn't find anything. Carl nodded. Not a potion, but the overload technique that you used to reach Overlord should work on them to help them advance. There's still a fair way from the bottleneck, though. Trying to pull them all up a rank so soon after advancing is not easy. I mean, relatively soon. I don't think that most people are intended to advance at the rate that we have been. Plus, we should all be getting close to our natural limits. Only a few from every generation can make it to immortality, even if they live long enough to try. So we might need to give them more time to avoid damaging their foundation with a forced advancement. That happened a lot in the Golden Dragon Nation. Future advancements were sacrificed for more rapid power growth to get past bottlenecks. The rest of the group did have the favor of the gods, so there was a good chance they would eventually make it to the mythic rank. They just needed more than a few months or a single year to move through the totem rank. Briefly, Carl wondered how long it had taken Rue to move from Overlord to mythic rank after he had left. Her potential was absolutely incredible, and she was living in a time near the peak of the mana resurgence where the mana was even stronger than it was currently in the Dragon Isles. It was a shame that time didn't allow him to see it all. Chapter 1434. Where next? You know, we should all go try out the dungeons again. We've grown so much since the last time that we actually explored them that it is definitely worth a trip. Tessa suggested. Thor froze in panic. What was she going to do? He always went with her into the dungeons, but he was mythic now. Relax, big guy. She will be with a team and they will take care of her while you're not there. Carl offered, attempting to calm the behemoth. Thor sighed. I know that. But it doesn't make it easier. Kara gave Thor what was intended to be a kind smile, but ended up looking more mocking thanks to the scar on her face. We haven't gotten to bring Leo through a new dungeon yet. I think that he will enjoy it. Leo wasn't sure about that. The only combat skill he had was Gravity Slam. Opal flickered in her space, giving him encouragement. It wasn't about the number of skills you used, it was about how much fun you had using them. She didn't even leave her space for the dungeons, but they were still fun. She could call out her illusions to fight and watch the drama unfold. Leo thought about it. Watching the battle wouldn't be bad. He still didn't think that he was up to a big fight, but it would be fun to see. Besides, Brother Thor was enormous now. Just seeing him let loose on a battlefield would be entertaining. Oh, we could have him and Carl both transform and just block all the pathways so the monsters can't get to us. Remy joked. Leo laughed at the thought of frustrated dungeon monsters unable to get to the group because Carl's dragon form and Thor's full behemoth were so large. One day he would be in those ranks, just an enormous barricade of a monster. He was looking forward to it. There is a contest coming up at the arena. One of the alliances booked it out for 2 days to run a challenge. You could gatecrash. Dana suggested, forgetting to speak in the mind link. Everyone turned to look at her as they hadn't been privy to the conversation in Carl's mind. Oh, the beasts were suggesting that we have Carl and Thor transform to block the walkways in the dungeons to show off. She explained. Did Thor grow? Tessa asked. Yeah. Thor, why don't you show her in the tiny world? Dana suggested. She opened a portal for Tessa so she didn't have to walk to the entrance while Thor simply moved from his space to the tiny world directly. We should likely focus on the aftermath of the attacks instead of dungeons or contests. There is still plenty of money in the guild branch account, so we don't need to rush off to earn more. Ophelia reminded them. Oh, it wasn't about the money, just for the fun. But you have a point. There are a lot of things to repair all around the world. We could start with repairing the places that were truly trashed. You did the academy already, and we've been working on Drod, but there are still more locations where people need assistance, and there are likely frogs running rampant somewhere that didn't win the fight. She added. You have a good point. We could be helpful and let the whole Dragon Isles know about the Darklight host. It would bring in even more business, and it would build an even better reputation when it comes time to expand the guild and open more branches. I know that the core group will want to stay together, but once we get more trusted mythic rank members, some of them will likely want to spread out and open new branches. Ashbringer reminded them. Oh, good point. We've got a full house here now, but in 20 years we will have a whole new generation of guild members coming up, and we will be at member limit, so we will have to open an official expansion branch. Carl agreed. Ashbringer laughed. It won't take 20 years. The craftsmen are already looking at taking in apprentices, and a few of the men are likely to be married as soon as the city is rebuilt. Turns out crisis drives people to make decisions, and formalizing relationships is one of the more popular ones. Ray smiled as she transformed back into a humanoid. This is an excellent chance to go explore. We can see the places that Carl got to go without us, and then visit the spider temples in Nerid and some of the other dwarves in Zarareg. We've got some of them here, and they can make us a highlight map of places to see. She's definitely thinking of places she can go to find new things to kill. Ashbringer noted. 100% yes. Ray agreed. There were all sorts of new monsters on the other islands, and she hadn't even gotten a chance to see them yet, much less kill them. Not to mention Nerid had all sorts of spider-type beasts that she had to compare herself to so she could accurately gauge how favored she was by her goddess. These things were of the highest priority, even more important than rebuilding the destroyed cities. Dana tried and failed to avoid laughing at Ray's determination to find new things to kill, then gave in and turned to Tessa for support. No, this time she has a point. If there are invaders left over, we should go find them. It's the right thing to do, and if it happens to come with a side of investigating new monsters and meeting possibly interesting people from Carl's latest adventure, so be it. Carl shook his head. No, we were sent by Misty. It was much too far into the past to be running into people that we met the first time. At best there might be one or two still alive after all this time. Though they were dragons. It wasn't impossible for there to still be mythic rank dragons alive from the last resurgence. He had met more than one of them already. He just didn't want to get anyone's hopes up. Chapter 1435. Go see them again. Nilla cleared his throat to get their attention from the guild store where he was standing in the shade. There was an attack in Gathuzan on the southern peninsula if you would like to go there. It's not far from there to Nerid, where Lady Ray wants to go find spiders. He suggested. Or you could go to Zarareg. They had some major attacks, but the dwarves are known to like staying within their caves and not clearing the wilderness. That might be a better option than the Dragonlands, where the population flies everywhere for fun. Deve suggested. The dwarves on the crafting team nodded in agreement. The druid made a good point. The dragon nations definitely had the advantage in detection. Kara transformed so she could speak to the others. We should go to NAR and then work our way south. We can do the big tour of the western islands and hunt everything. NAR? To the old royal capital? That's a good idea. The whole northern region is densely populated, and that should make it more likely to have been attacked. They're mostly dragons, so they will have hunted the edible stuff already, but there might be more left. Deve agreed. Kara nodded happily. Yes, let's go to NAR. And then tour south. We can see dragons and dwarves and elves and spiders. It will be wonderful, and we can help while building a good reputation for the Darklight host. Tessa stared suspiciously at the badger. Altruism was not one of her known personality traits. There was definitely a motivation behind her enthusiasm, but she couldn't decide whether it was related to their trip with Misty or to the aftermath of the attacks. What attacked that area? Was it something that would attract Saga? We should ask Hugo, he's been there plenty of times. Deve suggested. Carl focused on the portal spell and found that he shouldn't have a problem opening one to NAR Castle. I think I can take us there. As long as things haven't changed from the last time that I was there, it will be fine. He offered. Ray cheered. Wandering monsters, here we come. Naksha's eyes lit up with the power of the death god, which Carl took as a good sign, so he opened the portal and stuck his head through to make sure he was in the right spot. It was still the entrance to the royal palace, just as he remembered it, though there were many renovations done and the palace looked much different. Halt, who goes there? A guard demanded as Carl stepped through. Wait, should I transform into something different? What is the policy on that? Whatever. Greetings, I am Carl Drodbranch, leader of the Darklight host and avatar of the World Dragon. Behind him, Kara laughed as she came through, then shrunk herself with unobtrusive behemoth to sit on his shoulder. The guard stared at Carl, trying to determine if his words were true, so Carl let the title show. There was no title for Avatar, but he could easily prove that he was a guild leader. State your business. The guard insisted. I have come to assist with the aftermath of the attacks from the Immortal Realm. I will be bringing guild mates to fill out the team, and we will be moving across the Western Islands. The guard nodded. We are not doing new visitor approvals, only previously vetted guests are allowed inside. Carl nodded. Understandable. It has been some time since we were here, but we might still be in the castle logs. Behind him, Dana was obviously confused, but she remained silent. It wasn't just the Darklight host that was with them, though. Nilla and Deve had both come along for the trip, and Deve had brought Lars, the White Dragon cleric, from his guild. Most would take that as a statement of solidarity between Alliance members, but Deve was more concerned with what was going to happen here when the Darklight host arrived, and he needed to pick up a few more mythic raid team members for his guild. If they happened to pick up some more group members, this was a prime opportunity to recruit for the Alliance. More guards came out from the palace, and they brought out a familiar book with them. The palace log was an artifact-quality magical item that recorded everyone who visited the palace, and presumably it hadn't been changed as the palace was still occupied. I am Palace Steward Lucifer. Please place your hand on the book to verify your status as guests. The man holding the relic announced. Carl frowned as he extended his hand. Are you perhaps named after your father? The steward frowned back at him, unsure where that question had come from. The name is a title granted to the palace steward, chosen to honor an ancient immortal steward of the palace. Oh, that explains a lot. Carl placed his hand on the book as the steward tried to interpret what he had meant. For a moment there was no response, not a confirmation nor a denial. Then the book flipped open and an entry became visible. Emissary of Sihosesa, Avatar of the World Dragon Carl. Accompanied by one Chaos Badger for the purpose of training Princess Rue. Departed on good terms without incident. Ah, there it is. I knew that the book would remember me. But the steward only looked more confused. Log confirmed the date of his last visit. He demanded. The words faded from the palace log, and then a new set of text replaced it, confirming the dates he had entered and exited the palace. Carl noted with interest that the day he had gone for a flight to make a dramatic entrance was logged with a departure and re-entry, and that it noted he had flown in as a dragon while the others said he entered on foot or by portal. Now the guards and the steward were all staring at him. Sir, I don't believe that this log can be considered valid. More than one king has reigned since your last visit. It is impossible to claim that you are security vetted. The palace steward noted in a gentle tone. Well, that is fine then. We can skip the palace tour. But tell me, is there a particular spot where we might find monsters to hunt? Leftovers from the invasion are preferable. The more species the better. Chapter 1436 turned away at the gate. The guards looked at the rest of the group, and Deve bowed politely. I have been here much more recently than Carl has. I was here days before the invasion on business. However, I'm happy to follow them on their mission. The guard nodded. I remember you, Guild Master Deve. But security is security, and that entry for branch leader Carl is really too odd. We don't have a Princess Rue in this generation, and we didn't in the one before it either. But that name is familiar. Like I should remember it, but not because I use it regularly. Kara's satisfaction flooded the mental link, and Dana immediately knew that this had something to do with what they had been doing with Misty. If the dragons had forgotten, then it was millennia ago, but obviously something important enough that they still learned about it. With Kara and Carl left unattended, that could mean anything. The palace steward put the palace log away and took out a single sheet of paper. This is the map we are distributing with all of the known attacks on the northwestern island. You can refer to that if you wish to hunt monsters, and there is an index on the back as to what type they were and the initial battle outcome. He explained. Oh, that is exactly what we needed. Thank you. The steward acknowledged him with a nod and then walked back inside the palace, leaving only the two guards at the gate. Where is the best place to start? Ray asked eagerly while Carl examined the map. We can start just east of here. Under 100 kilometers east there was a crab army attack. Carl suggested. We did crabs once. Is there another? 200 kilometers south, and we can clean up after a frog attack that started in the wilderness. But everything else involves going past those two. Ray sighed. Crabs it is. We've done more than enough frogs, and the crabs are actually useful once we finish with them. Carl opened the tiny world entrance. Hop in and I will fly over. Are you that much faster than everyone else? Naksha asked. Well, you can fly along if you want. I suppose that Tessa could too, but her dragon form is fairly small. I'm just ridiculously large in dragon form, so I fly fast. Dana whistled and Hawk landed near her so she could mount. All right, we will go as a small group. Those who aren't up to high-speed flight can wait in the space. There should be punch and pie. Deve laughed. There surely would be snacks with all the shaman-class refugees and nature priestesses that were in that space. If we're going to fight more mythic crabs, some of us should likely stay in the space. Ophelia noted. It'll be fine. It'll give you a barrier and you can do crowd control or civilian rescue. The note says that this one is still an ongoing threat, so there might be locals in trouble. Those who couldn't fly moved through the portal and Carl transformed to lead the way to the battle. And that was when the guards finally realized where they had heard the name Princess Rue before. Queen Rue, immortal queen of destruction, the iron-hearted ruler, who purged half the nobility after they united in rebellion and made an attempt on the king's life. She had been guided through her growth by an avatar of the world dragon sent as a gesture of goodwill by the chaos dragon of Saihosesa. And here was Carl representing the Darklight host and name-dropping the most feared person in their nation's history. But before they could say anything, Carl and his group were already too far away. That was probably for the best. If anyone within the royal family knew that Carl was that avatar of the world dragon, there would definitely be issues. And not just because everyone wanted to know if the legend of Queen Rue, advancing 4 times in 1 month, was true. They were tempted to try to chase him down to find out for themselves. What could it hurt? If he really could do it like the legend said that the world dragon's avatar could, then it would be a huge benefit to their offspring. Send a wing to Gthunbu. There is an avatar of the world dragon going there to hunt leftover crabs with a team. We believe that he might have the secret to instant advancement. The gate guard instructed his subordinates. But Captain, isn't that already known? I heard that the Darklight host has a potion that can make children advance with 1 sip. The lieutenant replied. Then go find a way to get it. And get on his good side. That was all that it took to spread the word that the alchemists of the Darklight host were in the country, which meant that the dragons didn't have to go to the Drod Guild house and wait in the queue for a new round of production. Or at least they hoped that was what it meant. There are a lot of dragons flying behind us. Dana pointed out after a few minutes of travel. I think that they might have recognized us. The Darklight host is a legendary guild after all. Officially, I suppose now that Matilda has advanced. And they're not chasing us because you did something to their royal family, right? Probably not. I am fairly certain that we avoided the bad ending route. They're likely chasing us to try to buy the good stuff. It's not easy for people on this island to get our goods from Drod. Most mages can't portal that far in one hop and supplies are limited. Remy smiled to herself. That sounded like willing volunteers to test new potions. For her, she didn't often find guinea pigs at the totem or mythic rank, and she had ideas. I want to stomp crabs now that I'm extra big. This is going to be fun. Thor joked. He also had larger horns now that he had advanced. He didn't have the defensive frill behind his head that he had as a Sero, but his head was armored and he still had 3 horns in the same pattern, so his basic combat style remained the same. It just got easier with an advancement and size increase. Chapter 1437 Crab Feast. Carl descended when he saw the first few crabs wandering the open fields. Those do look tasty. How is our supply doing? He asked. Never good enough. But we can sell them in Drod. They got frogs. Or in Xylaz. The arena can sell lots of mythic meat. Seafood specials at the arena. Ray suggested. With a built-in wholesale market, there was always a good reason to hunt more edible monsters. The immortal realm had been kind that way. The crabs scattered when they saw Carl and Hawk diving at them. They weren't the brightest of creatures, but when 2 enormous shadows dropped on them from above, they were smart enough to run. Keep them from going north toward the city. Dana warned. I will circle to that side and let the others out. Carl landed between the crabs, and the city then called for everyone who wanted to fight to come out of the tiny world. That was the core group and a dozen of the former refugees from the immortal realm. They had gotten classes after arriving in this world, and they were all eager to not only make a living but to build skill points to buy abilities. Starting out at mythic rank with only a handful of class skills was a strange spot to be and a huge disadvantage for them compared to other mythic residents and their earning potential. However, for the defense-focused beast rangers in the group, this was an excellent opportunity. The crabs here had water magic, and they were heavily armored with solid attack power. A few of them had managed to get the Beast Ranger class skill that allowed them to bond a second beast, but most of them hadn't taken that path or hadn't gotten enough points to even start. Of course, not all of them wanted a crab, but they were going to fight their way across the continent according to Thor, so there would be chances for the other roles to gain opportunities. Hey, I just realized that Fox Charm isn't active when Dana is in the greater beast form. Make her turn it back on. Tion complained. Is that the biggest concern you have right now? She replied. Yes. It makes you smell different. It's better with Fox Charm on. Dana rolled her eyes as Hawk circled for another attack, and she cast her golems on the ground beneath them. I'm 100 meters away and downwind. You'll get over it. Tion grumbled as he speared a crab with an earth spike. That was not the point. He liked when Dana smelled like fox magic. The little fox scampered up Lotus' leg as the priestess came out to support the group. At least Lotus was reliable. She smelled like cake. Multiple kinds of cake, actually, as she had been baking while eating a different flavor. Leo came out of his space to join the festivities. Mostly he was just floating over the battlefield, but after a few seconds Lotus jumped up on his back with Tion, so he could become a mobile healing platform for them. Being so far up made it much easier to see, and they were comparatively small enough that they didn't burden the baby turtle when he had enlarged himself for combat. Leos, gravity slam. Smashed a crab into the ground when it tried to approach them, and Deve was quickly on it defending the clerics. He wasn't sure that their plan was the best one, as it made the healers easy to spot for the enemy as well. But he had to admit that it was better than having a waist-high priestess running around in the long grass. Deve joined the rescue group to tank for them, as they didn't have a proper tank of their own, then did a double take as he saw Carl's tactic for killing the beasts. He stayed in an enlarged dragon form and simply grabbed them by the shell, as the crabs couldn't get their pincers on his claw. They could pelt him with water bullets, but Carl simply evaporated their head with a chaos blast and tossed them in a pile. It was effective, he wouldn't say that it wasn't. But at what point did a battle become a farming effort? Even the behemoth had resorted to flipping them with his horns and stomping on them while someone else killed them. "We have incoming," Tessa called, as the dragons who had chased them from Nar Palace finally reached the battlefield. There weren't many crabs in this group. Carl had intended to just move around the area hunting them, but the number of dragons coming their way would make that nearly impossible. Unless there was a hidden cluster of them, they wouldn't get more than a few each after this fight. "Avatar, we have come to assist in the cleanup of the monsters," a mythic rank shadow dragon announced as he landed near Carl, his normally impressive might dwarfed by the bulk of Carl's behemoth-enhanced body. "Wonderful. The crabs here are fairly sparse, but they are still mythic rank monsters, and the farmers will appreciate having them all gone from the area. Plus, they are quite tasty." The dragon looked at the pile that Carl had been making and nodded. "I see. All right, we will spread out and clear the area completely. You know they want something from us, right?" Ophelia asked as she protected Leo and the healers from attack. Carl nodded his oversized draconic head at her. "Of course. They did mobilize a whole lot of mythic dragons to help though. I'm sure that it's actually supposed to be someone else's problem, but they're here. We should show off," Remy suggested. Thor gave Carl a pointed look, as he was currently plucking mythic rank crabs like he was grocery shopping thanks to the damage of the immortal ranked. Chaos blast. But that wasn't what she meant. Bringing back an old favorite, Apocalypse, created a massive firestorm in the sky, raining meteors with hellstorm vortexes twirling around the battlefield. Then for good measure she added a thunderstorm for lightning and corrosive rain. "No swamp?" Thor asked, but Remy just shook her head. "They're crabs. They'd like it." "Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.